I'm reading from Ross Mackenzie's book, EVERNIGHT. The chapter today is called Arrival. It is the 50th chapter. All over the slums of King's Haven, where the roadblocks have been set up to cage the poor, there are terrible signs of growing desperation. The piles of bodies around the fences grew as starving, freezing people tried to climb them, and they were cut down by bullets from coppers' pistols. The coppers themselves had been threatened with death by the Silver King if they were to let a single soul through, and so they stood firm. The morning after Granny died and Joe became Shadow Jack's master, the stars began to go out in King's Haven. As is so often the case with important things, the children noticed first. It was as if the stars were candles, and somebody was going around the heavens snuffing them out one by one. When only the moon remained, the people of the slums, abandoned by their king, stood in the streets and begged their gods, Lady Light, Mother Earth, and whoever else might be listening, to help them. Their gods were not listening. The moon blinked once, twice, faded, and was gone. The sky was nothing but a vast empty blackness, a hole that seemed to reach down and swallow everything. Clinging to each other, to the few lamps and candles they had left, the people of the slums began to scream. The coppers at the roadblock fences took one look at the blackness above and abandoned their positions. Nobody noticed the armada of black ships sailing, unlit, into the harbour. With their eyes turned to the sky, the slum folk only saw the painted when it was too late. The painted swarmed through the slums, carving their dark spells into the flesh of the poor who dwelt there, deleting their memories, connecting them with the hive mind, so that their only thoughts were of the EVERNIGHT. Tens of thousands bottlenecked at the alleys and roads, and the panic spread. The palace was mostly empty. Only the king, Mrs. Hester, and a handful of servants had remained when the others had evacuated. Now the king stared up at the smothering black sky, starless, moonless, his fat hands grabbing at the walls to steady himself. The sight of it made him weak. His shriveled heart shrunk further in his chest. A hand rested on his shoulder, and he jumped. "Time for you to go, Your Majesty," said Mrs. Hester. "The painted have reached the slums." The king nodded. Yes, I think you are right. Give the order. Evacuate the rest of the palace." He went to the door, stopped, and looked back at her. "Do you think we have made a mistake?" Mrs. Hester smiled. "No, Your Majesty. We've played this just right. And you're sure we can control this thing when it's done? What we need it to do?" "Yes, Your Majesty." If you only knew, she thought. Joe Littlefoot had wrapped Granny's body in clean sheets, and now he stood by the bed, his head bowed. "I'm sorry for your loss, Master," said Shadow Jack. "Don't call me that. I'm nobody's master." "You hold the urn," said Shadow Jack. "Whoever holds the urn is my master, until the day my master sets me free." He scoffed as if he knew that this would never happen, and his eyes became dark pools of sorrow. Joe was about to ask him to elaborate, but he stopped and tilted his head, listening. Through the window, the eerie, freezing quiet of the slums had just given way to the sound of a mob. Joe went to the window, threw it open, and looked up at the sky. "The stars are gone." "The painted are coming, Master," said Shadow Jack. "You should leave. I can take you anywhere." Joe stared out at the city. Most of the street lamps were out now, and King's Haven was a collection of towering shadows. "Is it over? Are we finished?" Shadow Jack reached into his pocket and brought out a splendid clockwork bird made of gold and wood and brass. It lay still in his palm, shining and gleaming in the light of the dimming toshing lamp. Joe reached out to touch the cold, fine metal of the bird's wings. "What is it?" "It's a way to stop the Evernight," said Shadow Jack. "A spell. Mrs. Hester sent me to get it. It was part of her plan." "Plan?" "She is the one who brought the Evernight back." "Why would she do that?" "To kill the hags and to become the saviour of the world." Joe stared at Shadow Black's bone-coloured face. "She's mad." "Yes, she is, but I no longer serve her." "And we can sort this? That bird can help? That's what you said?" "Yes, but it hasn't moved since I took it away from the last member of the secret coven charged with protecting it. Until she dies and her soul leaves this existence, the Fox Girl is the only person who can use the spell." Joe gasped. "Lara? Do you mean Lara Bell Fox? I can't believe it." He stared around. "You need to take it to her." Shadow Jack gave an ironic smile. An hour ago he had been about to kill Lara Bell Fox, and now he was going to have to find her all over again and, this time, probably protect her. He wondered if he'd ever be free. "Very well. Wait, before you go." Granny's last words were still ringing in his ears. "Smash the mirror." "Mrs. Hester, she has a mirror in her tower, right?" "Yes. Only it's not just a mirror, is it? There's a room inside it. I've seen it. She keeps things in there, glowing things in cages." "Souls," said Shadow Jack. "White witch souls is how she controls them." Joe nodded, staring up towards the palace. He opened his toshing bag. Inside was Shadow Jack's urn. Joe held it up. "Can you get me to that mirror?" "Of course." "And after that take the bird back to Lara?" "Anything you wish." "Right. Good." Joe turned the small urn in his hands. "Nobody should belong to somebody else. It's not right. I need your help. But when this is done, I'll set you free. That's a promise."